Ashley. I live in rural Mississippi. I have a 7-year-old son who was diagnosed about 3 years ago, 4 years ago with SYNGAP1. And throughout the saga of trying to capture a diagnosis and then trying to care and implement all the things that can help improve his daily activities, I've been constantly just met with one problem after another, not by anybody's fault or for anything that anybody has done, but it's very difficult to care for a person, and particularly a child who, like my son, is nonverbal, to figure out all of the things that he needs on a daily basis and then get through all of those with all of the necessary support from both doctors and providers and therapists, school teachers and aides in school, even bus drivers and caregivers in our home when we're there and when we are not. And it seems like, things change, right? He ages and he grows into and out of certain things, and just constantly keeping everybody on the same page can be a challenge at times. Sometimes it's less challenging than others, but inevitably the one of the things about SYNGAP1 is that as these children and as these patients grow up and develop, different challenges will present themselves. And so being particularly mindful of trying to stay ahead of that changing curve and provide all of our caregivers and all of the people who interact with me on a daily basis constant up-to-date information has been one of the larger challenges that we have experienced as parents of a disabled person. The first really thing that we noticed that was going wrong with him when he was a baby and infant was he would aspirate when he would feed on a bottle, and that led us down the whole swallow study road, and it required at that time in his life very specific mixing of liquids that he could and could not swallow, and if he did not have the right consistency, it could cause all kinds of problems. And then just the swallowing then later led to different digestive problems. And then, once we figured that part out and he started developing seizures, and when we got his SYNGAP1 diagnosis, it was a struggle to inform all of his caretakers what his seizure types presented as, what they looked like, because they were atypical. They don't yet present as convulsions for him. So really educating everybody about what the things that could go wrong with him look like now and what they could look like in the future, to inform us if something were changing is quite vital, right? Simply because he goes to school in a public school district, and we don't have FaceTime with him for the majority of his waking hours when he's at school. So just informing everybody who interacts with him, this is what things look like today. This is what we anticipate if they change. Right now he has a specific type of seizure that's called drop seizures. If they break through, and so if that happens, they don't look like a typical seizure for somebody who just is not familiar with them yet. So really just like being able to identify, this is what things look like now. Here's how we deal with that now. We expect, or this could happen. And if you see anything different or changing, please let us know. That's the thing that we struggle with probably the most, is getting information from caregivers at any time when they think that something might be different, or when they experience something that they haven't experienced before but don't know to look out for as a potential trigger for the next big developmental change that he might experience, if that makes sense. So unfortunately, being in Mississippi, we don't quite have a lot of state provided resources. I mean, luckily, and I say luckily because it was a difficult challenge that shouldn't have been as difficult as it was, but Nathan is on Medicaid provided by the state of Mississippi. And other than that, since he is in a public school setting, the Department of Education is required to provide all of the supports that he needs as long as he is enrolled in public school. And we are doing the things that are recommended, and the school is working with us to do that. So the majority of his care is delivered in the public school setting in Mississippi. He's in a regular classroom. He has a one-to-one aide who supports him all throughout his day at school, from the time he gets on the bus until the time he's dropped off. And so he has that dedicated person to help walk him through all of the school activities. But we also have physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and behavior therapists provided by just personal pay, not through insurance or anything. And then the care outside of his school setting, majority looks like um, students who are majors in the special education program at the University of Mississippi, who we interview, and we have anywhere from 3 to 5 caregivers at any one time, and they're on a rotating basis depending on what our schedule looks like and their schedule. So from the time he's off for the bus at school, we have somebody who we pay privately out of pocket and train independently and with the help of our behavior therapist to get them caught up on Nathan and so that everybody is providing consistent care for him. Luckily, right now, the stage that he's in, he's almost 8. He has his seizures pretty well maintained and managed with medications, with very few, if any, breakthrough seizures right now. So we're not quite as worried about the medical side of things, but are really focused on his communication and language development and just social behavior, what is acceptable out in public, because one of the things that we care deeply about is providing constant examples of what socially acceptable behavior is for a child living in the world today, and also just so that the world also can recognize a child who suffers from SYNGAP1 or just any disability and can maintain that awareness of this particular child needs help, right? So Nathan also has a medical alert dog. She is trained for seizure identification developed from the particular part of the brain that is detectable. But she also provides a key aspect of elopement prevention. So my child is mobile and he's surprisingly fast. So if in the course of going out to do any one of his activities in the afternoon, going to a park or to therapy or to the grocery store or something, any just outside of the home activity, it requires for him to be attached to his medical alert dog. And so that requires the caregivers to be familiar with how his dog and he wear the vests that they wear and how to tether in the correct places so they don't trip or it's not done incorrectly that can potentially be harmful or hurt the medical alert dog. But it also just requires everybody understanding like how that's supposed to look. Otherwise, if he's not properly attached, he could run out into traffic or get himself lost in a store or at the park or something. And so the consequences are very problematic. And as parents of a child that can't speak for himself, doesn't understand the concept of danger or anything that I can do to prevent a mishap or an accident, that's my priority is going to be preventing the things that we know that can happen in a manner that is consistent and trackable and fairly low intensity as far as like a learning curve. I always try to keep everything as simple as possible. But yeah, the consequences of not doing so are very dire. Streamlines efficiencies that makes it a little bit easier to do all of the daily things, even if it's just training videos for the 5 different things that happen on a regular daily occurrence for my child, and other children would require a whole many more steps and more complicated processes. But even just knowing that the 5 minimal things that need to happen every day in order for my child to be cared for in a safe and consistent manner would be beneficial. And preventing potential accidents that could happen by not adhering to the protocols and procedures that we have in place. If everything goes perfectly, at least having that system in place that's easy to share and that's all. That would make our lives a little bit easier.